Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Political No Brainer, the podcast where we move past winner takes all politics and into real conversation. I'm with David Beckemeyer with the Outrage Overload podcast. And we are, if you will, not to beat up a point, but we are in an overload of outrage when it comes to politics these days. And this is a great podcast. I'm really happy you're joining me. I'm looking forward to joining your podcast. But I want you to talk about your podcast, just like we briefly talked about a second ago. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, well, thanks. I'm glad to be here. And yeah, so a lot of times people hear outrage overload or they see the title and they think, oh, this is going to be a show to help talk about how to get you mad or whatever, right? And it's kind of the opposite, right? So we're sort of talking about how a lot of us have hit the limit. Like I can't take it anymore. Like there's so much outrage out there. And so that's kind of what we talk about is what's the media doing? We talk about what is some of the science behind this, what are some of the psychology that helps us kind of fall into these traps. And then we talk about misinformation, disinformation, and some of the tech and things like that. So yeah, it's a science show about outrage in society, outrage in politics, and lowering the temperature.
And that's great. What does the media do to either raise the temperature? What is their purpose anymore? Because I'm starting to wonder every time I read something, I'm starting to wonder how much research I've really got to give it before I give it any credence. And that's just, I guess, my biggest question.
Yeah, I mean, the information landscape we're dealing with is definitely challenging. There's no magic place you can go and always get the best information and things like that, right? The best publications sometimes don't do well, do a bad job. And the worst publications sometimes have a really great article. So there's no guarantee I can send you one place and you'll always get good quality. And then worse than that, we have our outright partisan landscape too as well, right? So you have the partisan media at the TV level and then of course the old talk radio days, but also a lot online, right? And they're like apologetically partisan, right? So they're going to spend a lot of their time telling you how awful the other side is. And that's a big piece of what we talk about when we talk about kind of things like the outrage machine or a rage bait and stuff like that. That a lot of it is that. But if we're talking about in the news broadly, yeah, there's no magic place to go get good quality stuff. That's for sure. I mean, you can certainly do things like look at the byline. Did somebody put their name on this or not? If they don't even put their name on it, then it might be questionable right there. And then if they have put their name on it, what other stuff have they written about and where do they use? How do they fall? Do they have kind of a reputation for credibility and things like that? But yeah, it's definitely a challenge to like you're saying, sort of how much should I weigh this thing I'm reading? I mean, one thing I often say is maybe there's more to the story. So if you're finding yourself getting a little riled up, maybe that's a good question to ask. Maybe there's more to this story.
And then comes down, just like you said, where the bylines or any particular source of how you're looking for credibility. Not everybody's me and you, David. Not everybody's doing what we do. Tell us about the rage bait for one.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at both partisan news shows like on TV and things like that, and also if you're looking at social media, right? There's a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels and things like that. That's their whole shtick, right? They've got a whole way of attracting an audience and keeping them engaged. And a lot of they spend a lot of energy criticizing the other side and basically trying to tell us they're evil or they're bad and they're we're morally superior than they are. And then they do that by showing us how they're doing something terrible. And then they usually hype up to something terrible, right? Make it probably even worse than it really is. And we're sitting here watching it going, yeah, I knew I was better than them. And see, look at that bad thing they did. So that's a lot of it is that kind of reporting is look what the Democrats did or look what the Republicans did. And isn't that awful? And then they have 4 talking heads telling you how awful it is in 4 different ways. And so that's a piece of what that is. On social media, it can be even more exaggerated, right? Because you have individuals who have kind of fallen into this trap, and they begin the whole conversation with the Democrats always or the Republicans always do X, Y, Z. They're always the worst ones, and there's a lot of that kind of throwing people into a big bucket. That's generally an oversimplification that all Democrats never do that, and all Republicans typically don't do the same thing. That kind of stuff. So. And so on, and then social media can be very personal, right? I mean, not only are they bad, but you individually are bad, and you're the one who supports this stuff, and you can get into these very direct kind of fights. And then you see the same thing in political campaigns, right? So I'm gonna I like this environment a little bit if I'm a candidate because it simplifies my political campaign. I don't really have to tell you that much about what I'm going to do. I'll just tell you the bad things the other person's doing or has done or plans to do or whatever, right? I can focus all my energy on how terrible they are, and then I don't have a lot of accountability to what I promised to do because I'm not going to make that many promises. I don't even have to. You'll vote for me anyway if I tell you how bad the other side is, particularly in a situation where there's only two levers to pull.
And so to that point, exactly just what you said is, I know we talked about or agreed on or sort of inadvertently agreed on. We're not going to get into the specifics of politics. We're going to get into the understanding of rage and rage overload. But when you think of the presidential campaign, that was Kamala Harris's significant signature item. She's not going to talk about anything she's going to do. And she simply didn't talk about anything she was going to do. I mean, she kept that promise well, and she didn't have to keep any promises. But she did talk all about Donald Trump and what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. And frankly, he himself talked about it. And then she says, "See, I told you." And then so you've got a president said, "She told you, and I told you too." So where are we at with this? I mean, who ultimately has more credibility in that scenario?
Well, and I think it depends on on all the whole context of everything going on. I think the Democrats have sort of tried the Trump is bad strategy twice and lost, so it hasn't been particularly effective. But and with Biden, it was a little different because people were a little tired of Trump, and he had a little bit different spin. He did sort of say, "I'm not Trump," but he said instead, "I'm this kind of centrist-ish candidate, and I'll be kind of a middle of the road guy," and he didn't necessarily exactly do that once he got in power, but that was kind of his pitch. And people were a little bit tired of Trump. Trump's shtick of I'm going to fix everything's broken and I'm going to fix it works a lot better when you're not the one in government. when you're in government, you're saying everything's broken. It's like, well, you're in charge, right? Like, why do you keep telling me everything's broken? But, certainly, I think Democrats did not learn their lesson from 2016 very well, that they stuck to that sort of Trump is bad message mostly. And it just wasn't landing with voters.
No, it didn't land with voters at all. And the truth is that Trump continues to say everything's bad. But what he does have is a level of support where everything that's bad, he does seem to turn on its head. And there's been a sense of, oh my God, I've been waiting for this for 50 years. So even though we're not the ones that have been, not necessarily, I haven't been waiting on anything for 50 years. I've pretty much been accepting what we get, which is really garbage from both sides. But he did keep his promise to those who he really made the promise to. And I always use the example of Ronald Reagan promised to close the education department. It grew in size and scope in his 8 years. Donald Trump says he's going to close it, even though you could almost argue legally he hasn't closed it yet, but he's done more to close it than anybody else. So again, coming into 2028, if you will, do the Republicans really have a leg to stand on as far as credibility goes versus the Democrats, who are still, like you said, lost in the sauce as to what they want to be?
Yeah, well, there's a lot I want to unpack there a little bit because I think one thing that I want, before I get into the specific question, I do want to talk just a little bit about how Trump is kind of a proxy for an ailment and actually a disconnect that the American people have had for a while. And it is the parties brought it on themselves to a large degree by not getting enough done. But one thing that's sort of been happening is they have, and the Congress has done this too. We've forgotten that's not really how our government was designed to work. That the sort of president decides everything, and they get to rule everything. That's not exactly how our country was designed. Our country was designed with these three branches of government, and they're supposed to be sort of co-equal, and they're supposed to be sharing responsibilities, and they're supposed to be building. In order to get things done, they're supposed to be building coalitions, and it's messy. It's not as nice. It's not as pretty. So there's been this both push by the populace, but also kind of it's the political elite. In other words, and I say political elite, I mean the insiders. So the politicians themselves, their messaging, their donors, things like that, have kind of pushed this messaging of this. The president is kind of responsible for everything, and that's not the way our system was designed, but it's sort of effectively kind of what happens a little bit. And forever, Hoover will be responsible for the Depression and this kind of thing, right? And there's always sort of that president happened to be there when something happened, and they're the ones responsible. But in reality, of course, the president doesn't make law, and the president is not supposed to be the one who fixes everything for us. They're not supposed to be kind of mommy and daddy to come in and fix things. They're supposed to have these other jobs that are also there, plus Congress. A lot of that job is supposed to be Congress, right? So I just want to. So Trump is like a a fulfillment, if you will, to a lot of grievance with the American people, this populist idea that, because it's not, and it's not Republicans and Democrats. Republicans aren't the only ones that think this. Democrats think it too. Like, I want my guy to solve these problems. Why can't they just come in and fix these problems? And one of the reasons is because that's not how our system was designed. Like, presidents aren't supposed to just go in and do everything. But the people are so fed up that Congress isn't doing their job and these other departments aren't, and things aren't getting done, that they're like ready for that now. Like, so there is this piece of Trump that, for a lot of people, they see it as him getting stuff done, right? Even if he's sometimes pushing the limit of what's legal and things like that, he's getting stuff done. Like, he's bucking the system, which is a lot of exactly what I think to you're saying. He not only he campaigned on that, but also people wanted that. Like, people expressed, I want somebody that's going to buck the system because the system isn't working for me, kind of thing, right? So I think Trump speaks of that both across. And certainly he appealed to independence on that, right? He wouldn't have won without independence. So he has his base, but that wasn't going to win him an election. That message appealed to independence. And yeah, as you say, the other messaging that Democrats were doing didn't necessarily appeal to independence. But so to get back to your question, though, what's the Democrats and what I'm obviously not a political strategist to tell the Democrats what they should do, or Republicans either for that matter. But I think both parties have a challenge ahead of us as Americans coming forward, right? I mean, and again, we'll see as this develops. We're a ways away. We're still a ways away from the midterms too. People think the midterms are settled, but we're still a ways away. There's a lot that can happen. We kind of forget that our politics are a little bit like basketball. You kind of tune in the last 5 minutes. You don't have to worry about the other parts of the game. Just you'll figure out what's going on in the end. But I think we are headed to some tension here, and this is getting a little scary because on the Republican side, Trump is a lame duck president, right? He's heading into the second part of his term. He's going to become more and more lame in the lame duck sense, right? People are going to pay less attention to him. The other politicians are going to pay less attention to him because he's not going to be in power next time. He's not going to be campaigning next time. And they haven't really found their successor yet. All these people are trying to be the successor, whether it's Tucker Carlson, J.D. Vance, or whoever is trying to stand up and be the successor. And really none of them stand out. There was some recent polling on this from the More in Common people, I think it was. And if you look at I forget the exact language, but it was along the lines of who's the best American in the country or something like that. And this was a poll of people on the right and Republicans. And Donald Trump is up there, like in the graph, sort of towards the top half of the graph. Everybody else, all these other people are like down at the bottom, and they're all kind of tied. None of them stand out, right? They're all just kind of a mush down at the bottom compared to Trump. So there's nobody standing out in this crowd of other people that are trying to be Trump. So that's going to create Trump not being there is going to create a power vacuum. That's going to be, I think, there's going to be a lot of fighting over that within the Republican side. And then on the Democratic side, yeah, they still are struggling with. There was some polling about the Democrats recently that I had someone on the show, Frank Spring, who talked about it. That is sort of qualitative, deep polling. And it's not that people like people see that when they talk about something like diversity and that kind of thing, people see that, okay, yeah, the Democrats stand for that. And the reality was most people actually wasn't that a big of a deal. To some people on the far right, it was, but was a minor second. For most people, that didn't really matter. The problem is no one knows what else they stand for. Like, okay, standing for diversity is fine, but what else are you going to do for me? Like, what else are you doing? And this was the problem that Democrats had. If you name the second thing they stand for, it's like 50 different things. No one knows what the other three things should be. So that's a big messaging problem I think that Democrats have is they need to figure out. And a lot of people are saying, oh, they need to shift to the right. They need to throw out some of this culture war stuff. And there's probably some truth to that. I don't know. Again, I'm not a political strategist. But if people don't even know what you stand for, then you got a problem, right? And people talk about how bad Trump is and how unpopular he is or whatever. Trump has never been particularly popular in polling, right? He's always sort of hovered around this 40% mark, right? So he's not a particularly popular candidate. He's never been. But Democrats are worse. You know what I mean? It's like people don't like Trump, but they don't like Democrats more. And I think Democrats have to look in the mirror about that and say, like, okay, you're sending this you don't like Trump message. Well, people already don't like Trump. You don't have to tell them. They already don't like him, but they like you less.
Right. Well, you know what's so funny about that is because you said Democrats have the diversity piece for them. And then there's this lack of interest in the diversity piece. Well, I always said there was a lack of interest in the environment piece that they have for them. So I talk about Tesla and I say everybody, even corporate executives, Ford, got it all wrong. No one cared that Tesla was electric. The only thing that made Tesla so popular is they were fun to drive. And no one realized that. Really, even Ford spent $35 billion and then 3 years later wrote off $35 billion on an electric car investment. And so when I tell people, and Democrats especially, calm down in what you believe in and stop shoving it down our throat and stop getting mad at me for telling you no one cares. Because the fact of the matter is, no one really cares about half the crap you're putting out there. Now, like, so when we get into the idea of the trigger, what do we call it? Rage trigger. Rachel Maddow is a great rage trigger. You know what? Her show is fabulous, but if she ran for president, she wouldn't do very well. But her show does very well. So that's what Democrats really all they've got going for them. It's like you said, no one likes Trump. They keep pointing it out, no one likes Trump. But really, people like Angelo Ocasio Cortez less than they like Trump. But the fact of the matter is, I think Gavin Newsom comes out as Captain Articulate, but as a candidate for president, he's going to fall flat on his face. I mean, we've all heard the wisdom of Professor Newsom, and it's like, he makes me want to gag. It's enough. Because when you talk about it, whenever he talks about Trump, I can give you 5 examples of how he's done worse. So I just don't understand what's next. And like you said, what is next? For the Republicans, I think it's simple enough. Come up with a candidate, just pick him, whoever it is. Pick Tucker Carlson, pick Marco Rubio. Let Trump endorse him, and you've got 3 legs up on the Democrats. Because really, when it comes to their time to come up with a candidate, I keep seeing, like, could it be Michelle Obama and Andrew Ocasio Cortez? And I'm like, I'm voting for the Republican. And I'm not even a Republican. So, and they really do have the easier job of the next guy, because I call Trump the $1 trillion crash dummy that we all wanted. We wanted this guy in office to do all these things and see how it goes. It's gone fairly terrible, but at least we saw how it would go. Now there's a chance for Republicans to say, I'm going to be a little more moderate. I'm going to be a little more appealing. I'm going to be a little more articulate than Trump. A lot of people are going to gravitate towards that, which comes right back to your podcast of the idea of we're tired of the outrage.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely, I would, even though I think one thing I want to say about Rachel Maddow that I think is important in this discussion is that it's a different style in terms of like the style, the approach to how she does it. But she's as much of an outrage merchant as the folks that are sort of yelling loudly on. Like, she doesn't do a lot of yelling on the mic. She's kind of more, she seems more thoughtful and this kind of stuff. But it's the same, and it's the same effect. It's the same goal, which is trying to get people really mad about something, sort of something happening on the other side. And you have the damn Gino or somebody like that, or Alex Jones, who's doing it more sort of abrasively and yelling, and it's always loud on the mic. So it's more obvious. Like, people can say, oh yeah, Alex Jones clearly sort of does that. But people on the left will look at Rachel Maddow and go, well, she doesn't do that. Well, no, she's not yelling like Alex Jones or whatever, but she's doing the same kind of stuff. Like, she's bringing these stories to your attention that are going to make you mad. And maybe sometimes the stories are pretty close to real, but many times it's going to be her version of it. And it's going to be it's not going to tell lies. And I think that's another thing. People often think the news media is lying to them. What's much more common is they sort of just leave some stuff out. They leave some context out. They leave some of the details out. They make it more dramatic, often make it way more dramatic than it really is. And that's kind of what she's doing, right? She's going to show you sort of the worst parts of this thing she wants to explain to you and get you the maddest as she can get it. Like, you're talking about Newsom, right? A good example of that, right? I think his team's entertaining. Like, I agree with you. I mean, I don't think he'd be a very good candidate, especially I'm a California guy, so I know him from like a long time ago. So we know too much about him here, but some people think he'd be a great candidate, but I think you're right. I don't think he would be a great candidate once a lot, like you're saying, a lot of things about him would start coming out. But I think his social media team's kind of entertaining right now, I will say, the stuff that they're doing. But it's definitely an example of sort of the outrage stuff, right? But they're doing it, I will give them some credit, they're kind of doing it in a way that's just mimicking what Trump does or says. So it's kind of, in some sense, it's just a reflection. If you're going to tell us we're doing it, then you have to admit you're doing it too, because we're just kind of practically echoing what you're doing. So it's a fine line there. Like, I struggle with it. Like, I'm entertained by it, and the fact that it's done in this mirroring way kind of makes me give it some back. But the main point I wanted to make is that you have these people on the left. Very few are kind of yelling like an Alex Jones type, but they're still doing very similar things. Like, and the outcome and the goals are similar. They're trying to get you mad at the other side and get you riled up, so that you again and we go for it, right? Because we think she's on our team. We're on the blue side. We're on the right side. So when she says this stuff, we're not going to question it that much because we want to believe it because it makes us feel superior to the other side. And the same thing is true of, well, Alex Jones as an example, but even folks on Fox and stuff. They're going to say things that are going to be disparaging to the other side. And I'm not going to question it very much because I want that. Like, I want to feel superior to the other side. And I want to be able to say, yeah, I knew I was making the right choice because let's see how terrible those people are. So, yeah, there's an equivalence even if one side, even if the style is different between the right and left. And the left is probably more blind to it because it's brought with this kind of professionalism and laid back kind of vibe. You don't think they're doing it, but they're 100% doing it.
Oh, they're doing it. I watch Kamala Harris in interviews now. She lost. She acknowledged she lost. I said, I'm proud of being being a part of the team. At least said we lost. Okay. Then she comes. It's the capitulation. It's like you're a capitulator. They asked you on the View, what would you do different? You said nothing. So you couldn't bash your own boss for leaving the border wide open. And I've listened to experts on the border say he allowed millions of illegals just to flow through the floodgates of an open border. And it's like, could you have not said that? I'd at least close the borders. And no, she has to capitulate to the progressives and her party in general. So again, I just make the point, like you said, they do it better. They do it better, but it always costs them dearly. Obama was the greatest of all communicators, second to only Ronald Reagan. But during his 8-year watch, Democrats lost 1,200 seats in local government all across the country. Because the truth is, when those local candidates got out there meeting with people, they communicated a better message than Obama did. All Obama did was communicate very well with the people that loved him. That's easy enough to do. I can communicate with the people that love me, and they're going to say Jeff's the greatest. But when you try to articulate a message to the people that don't particularly care for you and you don't get your point across, you're not gaining any ground. And
Well, I want to say I wasn't trying to imply Democrats are better at it. I don't even know exactly what it is in that context. But I think when it comes to this outrage bait stuff, they're not better at it. They just have a different style.
right.
And it's just, I don't think it's better. It's just different because it's not better because it's not achieving sort of
It
achieving
seems
the
like
same
it's
sort of stuff.
more professional. Donald Trump literally says some of the most unimaginable things in the world. And I think I haven't heard a Democrat say some of the things he's ever said.
Right. Yeah, no, for sure. The political elite, right. If you get into that level where you're talking about, yeah, we're in a new world with the direct attacks on and the kind of rage bait, how high it's gone up into the political elite. Newsom's probably the biggest example of it. It is pretty focused towards Trump because he's kind of in a little battle with Trump. But yeah, you don't see it. And you don't see it as much yet, at least. I'm hoping it doesn't get worse in the Democratic elite. You don't see that people saying the kinds of things that Trump, but it's not only Trump. I mean, there are other people on the right and political elites that are doing it too. And so that's discouraging, right? That this kind of language and this approach and style has moved into the political elite so that they actually feel comfortable now doing it as actual candidates and representatives. They say this stuff now. And it's always been out there a little, but those people have always been sort of pushed to the fringes a little bit when they did it. Now they're like mainstream, they're the leadership doing it, right? And that's discouraging, and I don't think it's a good sign for the country. But yeah, for getting back to the people and what they're looking for, I don't know what's going to happen. I have no idea. But I think you make some interesting points that I think that probably people on the left, because I've seen a lot of this talk out there with people supporting Democrats talking about how, well, Trump's doing so badly. And they're going kind of right back to we'll just talk about how bad Trump is or whatever. It's like, you still have to come up with what you're going to do, right? And I think Mamdani got it, right? I mean, I think he got that. He told people in New York he had a message, and his message was, and these messages were, here's how New York's going to feel when I'm in charge, right? And this is something that Democrats don't do. Like, nobody really, if I asked you, how do you think the world's going to be? What's the country going to be like when Democrats are in charge? People don't have a good answer to that. But Mamdani told people, like, you're going to like New York again. Like, you don't like New York now, but you're going to like it now because you're going to be able to afford food. And he had very specific populist messages that he said to people, and he won.
What happens if Mamdani doesn't deliver, though? That's my question.
Yeah, I mean, certainly he's got that. Every politician has that risk, but he has it because everybody sort of assumes he's not going to work, right? Everybody thinks these ideas are crazy and they're not going to work. They probably don't all have to work because he made so many bold claims. I mean, Trump says, I'm going to lower prices on day one, and no one cares when he doesn't lower prices on day one. So, I mean, different people can get away with saying and doing different things, right? I think he'll get some benefit of the doubt if they don't all work, because he's admittedly sort of saying he's trying some pretty radical things. But yeah, he does suffer that challenge that he said some specific things. He made some big promises. And so how are people going to feel about those promises in 2 years or whatever?
So when it comes to the Outrage Overload podcast, how do you guys keep the level of outrage down? Is that your goal, or how do you do it?
Well, yeah, I mean, generally we try to. We don't really talk about issues a lot. I'm more meta. I more talk about how we talk to each other about politics and how the science behind it works. So, like when you're seeing this kind of messaging, kind of what's going on in your brain and how you can kind of have some resilience to it, build some resilience to it through just having a better mindset about that people are trying to get you mad and they're probably not telling you the full story. And so that's really a lot of what we're talking about is different tactics for A, just understanding some of the psychology going on, and then B, maybe some tactics and approaches you can take to be more resilient to it so you don't fall into it as badly, because it's not good for us. Like, it's not good for us to be mad at everything all the time.
No, it's not, right? So that's something I think when Trump first became president, I was mad all the time, right? And then I realized it's just not good for your health. My health declined. It really did. And I generally don't get sick. Now, of course, I'm getting older, but I was a lot younger than when he was first president. And then
Yeah, weren't
so
we all?
he himself thrives on the outrage, right? So I call it the Howard Stern effect. The people that hate him listen to him the most, and the people that love him just
Right.
decide we loved him yesterday, we'll love him today. It doesn't really matter. We loved him at this point 5 years. What would it be now? When he was first president, the first day would be almost 7 years ago or whatever. We love him now. We're okay with him. The people that hate him are really analyzing everything he does. For the longest time, you said I'm running for a third term. That sparked outrage. Can't run for a third term. And we literally had constitutional analysts spending 30 minutes of its time on the one simple comment. Is he the one promulgating the outrage most of all?
I don't think so. I think he's more a symptom than a pure cause. He's certainly a catalyst for it, for sure. But anybody that says we weren't on this path before Trump came along hasn't looked at the history and hasn't looked at kind of what else is going on out there. So, but he's a symptom of it for sure. And then again, like I say, he's also been a catalyst, and he also brought it to our attention once he won. And he sort of adopted a lot of these tactics. It really brought things that had been going on, but he really brought them out and really highlighted them and showed that we have these divisions in a stark way that I think maybe we were in denial about a little bit, and maybe we still are to a degree, right? That we don't really realize how divided we are and how bitterly divided we are. I mean, that's a big factor in this. And so, no, I don't think he created it all. It was on its path already. And maybe if Trump hadn't done it, there'd have been a different Trump come along eventually. But he definitely made it very crystal clear that that's the situation we're in. But I don't think he caused it. And where we go from here is really the big challenge. In some ways, maybe there'll be good outcomes from this, right? Because you kind of couldn't keep what we were doing forever, kind of pretending we weren't in this. And I win, one side wins, and kind of the pendulum swings, and people get madder each time because their side wins, but then doesn't do enough. And then my side wins, and their side wins, and it just goes back and forth. And meanwhile, Congress doesn't do anything. And we wonder why, because we're telling them to never compromise and this kind of stuff. And our whole system is built on compromise. So I don't think he was the cause, but I think there's an opportunity. Like I say, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe the outcome of taking this to a new place, just making it more. Maybe we'll start to be more aware of the situation we're in now. It's not helping that he's still ramping it up. Like, he won't settle down. Like, settle down, man. You got your way. Now you're in charge. Just settle down a little bit. Like, because he's still driving it quite a bit. Everything is partisan. Everything's partisan. And he raises that partisan rhetoric. It's always the Democrats' fault, or they're really terrible people at that very high level. You can't just accept that he won and do his thing. But so that maybe that will become a little bit more aware of it. I am challenged even as I'm saying that, because I also pay attention on social media and I see what people are saying and the kind of things that are out there. But I mean, I think the fact that we kind of have this people reporting more and more as independent, right? They're kind of fed up with both parties. You have more and more people kind of declaring they're sort of political homeless. I mean, that's kind of how I feel. I kind of feel political homeless. So I don't think so. So I think those are good signs that a movement may develop among this kind of politically homeless group to say, look, we're kind of fed up with both of you guys. And so get your act together, stop blaming each other, and blame yourself once in a while.
Well, wouldn't that be something if a candidate, and possibly for president, said, I realize I'm the reason for this problem, rather than saying Trump is the reason, or rather than saying Citizens United is the reason, or rather than saying so many things they've said is the reason. Wouldn't that be great if, when you talk about the sense of, presidents don't write laws, they sign them into law. So for the longest time, before Trump, before there was like Biden, and there was like Kennedy, and there was McCain, and they would work all these compromises in the Senate. And I think a lot of times the real conservatives felt like that too much went the liberal way. And then there was Trump that said, I'm going to reverse it all. Wouldn't it just be amazing if Gavin Newsom said, as a liberal, I gave away too much. And as a president, I'm not going to continue on the path of Trump, but I'm going to analyze a sense of, not to use the dreaded acronym Doge, but a sense of government efficiency. I'm going to analyze, do we really need to go every day deeper and deeper into entitlements and deeper into debt? Wouldn't it be something if one candidate, would he be the candidate that prevails?
Well, again, I'm not. I'm not.
Right,
If
right.
I
There's
was,
no way of
if I
predicting
was
it.
that sharp, I'd probably make a lot of money being a political analyst, right? But I mean, if you look at what the political analysts mostly say, they sort of still think you need to sort of be somewhat centrist. You need to appeal to that independent group, which tends to be kind of heterodox, but they also tend to be somewhat moderate. And at least that's what the political pundits say. I mean, we're still taking for granted these political pundits have done their polling is accurate and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I do think that's another example of where Trump did something I think people are looking for, and maybe a candidate can do some of this. I mean, he was off the normal charts, right? I mean, he didn't do it the way people do it, going all the way back to 2016, but then again in 2024, he didn't do any of the normal stuff candidates do, and he didn't speak the way that they are supposed to speak. And so I think that was welcomed. Like, a lot of people were ready for something different. So yeah, I think you're right that a candidate that's willing to just try any of the things you're talking about is probably got a chance with, because people really are looking for change for sure. Younger people are looking for change. I mean, the system isn't working from a lot of people's perspective. The system's not working for them, and so you know this other messaging that I think didn't play very well in 2024, that's going to preserve the institutions and protect democracy. People heard that, I think, as protect the elites, right? Because this democracy and these institutions aren't helping me. So you want me to preserve what? I mean, that's at least the perception. And I don't think that's exactly right, but I could see how people could have that perception. So people are ready for change. So I think you're onto something with a candidate that's ready to try something different.
Well, the only reason I asked is, I said, just as a part of my podcast, I was going to put up a presidential campaign website, what I would run on, and just be the voice of reason in a sense, and just be not. And I'm never going to be president. I have no desire to be president, but just talk about what a president should look like moving forward, and stop with all the rhetoric, and stop with all the outrage and triggering the outrage. And that's what I think essentially your podcast does, is because you can't always stay away from specific policy. Can't
Right.
always stay away from controversy. You got to believe in something, and it's going to be controversial. You can't even get 8 people in a room
Right.
to agree on what kind of pizza they want. Forget about 400 million Americans agree on a policy. But so I just think that, like you said, and my hope is that we can get more podcasts like yours that can literally say, let's talk about this, let's figure this out without the outrage, without blaming one another, because we're all to blame. We all wanted something, we all got it, because that's what they were doing, like Christmas presents. Politicians would
Yeah.
give you a little something, and the rest would go to the very powerful, of course, but you always got a little something out of it, and that's how you picked your side. And then, so I just think that, like you said, the old saying, never waste a good crisis. We're in a crisis. Let's not waste it. Let's get some good results out of it. Because the thing about Trump is, like you said, he was it was like when Mitt Romney was asked about how he paid his income tax, he danced and dodged the subject. But when Trump was asked, he said, because I'm smart. I don't pay taxes because I'm smart. And nobody really expected that. But the truth is, you did use the loopholes to your favor that Congress enacted for you to use in your favor. So that was the kind of, who's the next candidate to say this whole system sucks and I'm a part of it. I'm the guy. I remember thinking the other day about listening to Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan. He said, I love banking regulation. No, you don't love banking. You write banking regulation, and then you send it to Congress to pass, and it basically screws every local bank out of their ability to do business, and you take over from there. So some politician has to say, I was a part of this shitty system and I know how it works, and maybe I can mitigate some of the effects it's had on the average middle income person.
You mentioned AOC. She's done that a little bit on the Congress making bets in the stock market bit a little bit, right? She said, "Hey, I do it because you can, but we shouldn't be able to," right?
Right. So that was a good, I never even heard her say that, because I always say AOC, another obnoxious child. Andrea Ocasio, of course, says, I'm sorry, I got the acronym wrong. But maybe she did. I didn't know she said that. Now I like her a little more. We need more politics say just that. It's allowed, so I do it. It shouldn't be allowed, but while it's allowed, I'm going to continue to do it.
Don't
So
get me
you
started on
guys,
Gavin Newsom.
whatever he talks about, or Professor Obama talks about, what? Okay, there's this thing, and again, we're getting into a little specific here, but there's this thing in the Cayman Islands, the Unger House, where 60,000 corporations are housed for tax reasons. And he said it's the biggest tax game in the world during his campaign. And then he nominates Timothy Geithner and Jack
Right,
Lee, basically
right.
put the fox in charge of the hen house twice. So
Yeah.
you're the guy,
Same guys are back in charge. Yeah.
you're the guy that said it during the campaign.
Right.
Everybody loved it. And then you said, because people didn't understand what he had just done. He just completely advocated it. He completely allowed it. He put, so imagine if Obama said, if I come back to be president, I won't do that this time. Imagine
Right.
that.
I won't murder people all over the world with drones.
Right. I mean, imagine that. I just find it.
Well, I do want to see your presidential campaign. I am curious about your.
I mean, it's going to be unique. It's going to be education based. It's going to be healthcare based. And I'm a big advocate of the Affordable Care Act. I always said that the ACA should have never been the acronym Affordable Care Act. It should have been the Available Care Act, because half the time it's not affordable. But if, God forbid, you get diagnosed with something terrible, you can get a plan. I mean, it may be expensive, but it'll be a whole lot less than paying for your medical bills in whole. So, I mean, I'm probably going to do that. And and the other thing too is I'm going to limit it to $300,000 a state, a $15 million total budget, because we're at $3 billion for the last two people that ran for president, about billboards that said no tax on tips and stuff. And
well, yeah, I mean, that's something I was going to say. It's like one of the things you mentioned about the deficit and the deficit spending is like, so the problem with that is, of course, like you said later, is that we all want our pieces, right? So that's going to be a challenge. I mean, everybody kind of wants to reduce the deficit kind of in the abstract, unless it affects their programs, right? So that's a big one. And I think when you talked about our show, I did want to say one thing about that. Your campaign idea also reminded me of something else, that if we can't get to and no policy is perfect, right? There's always going to be trade-offs. But we very rarely even get to the point where we're talking about those trade-offs, because we're still talking about sort of these high-level Fox News or MSNBC talking point kind of stuff, right? So we never actually get down to the trade-offs where we actually probably there's a valid place to have a conversation about these trade-offs, right? And so if you're going to have a real candidate, we'd have to get to this point where we have deliberation. So that's a piece of what my show is about, is that we have to go beyond these hot takes. We have to go beyond even these winning. You see these debates on TV and they crush the other side. That doesn't get us anywhere, right? You won this debate. You humiliated the other person. What's that going to do? You think they're going to come to your side because you humiliated them? No, they're going to dig in even more, right? And they're going to think you're a terrible person. So we've got to get to this point where we can have real deliberation rather than debate, where we can get down to these nitty-gritty things. Get down to the trade-offs, because we often aren't even getting to the trade-offs yet, right? Because we're just so busy fighting the things. So the deficit one's going to be hard because it's going to be sort of unpopular, right? Because people are going to have to suffer. But I think another big one is the campaign. Like, how do you do this in a system where it takes so much money to win? And that's why these candidates are always having to acquiesce to donors, because they need so much money to win. So you said Citizens United is not the problem, but certainly money in politics is a big problem. And if you look at the amount of money that is being spent now than that was spent 50 years ago, not only, I mean, even inflation adjusted and all that, it's insane. It's crazy how much it costs to win even a school board seat in a modest town. It's ridiculous how much money's gone into politics. And then when we're mad when they make promises to this money. So, a candidate that's going to do this, I love the idea. I want to see policy. But yeah, I mean, how are you going to get the money? Like if the big donors and the corporate donors aren't on board with you, how are you going to get enough money to win?
Well, that's my point is I won't have the money. And my point is that how can you believe for a minute any presidential candidate that says, I'm going to be a good steward of your tax dollars if they're spending $1.5 billion of your hard earned money that could be going to St. Jude's Children's Hospital on a campaign, on
Right.
TV snippets and Facebook memes? They're spending $1.5 billion. I mean, that's essentially what Kamala Harris was able to raise in the 90 days she had to run a campaign. And Donald Trump, of course, had the full run of it all. So he was probably the longest possible candidate ever. When they say it's best to be a candidate for a shorter period of time, he went against that and was a candidate for as long as he could possibly be a candidate. But how can you believe for 1 minute either one of those is going to be a good steward of your tax dollars? And that was my point. Is it's again, it'll be out there. It's no secret, and it'll just be like just to read it, to look at it, to say, let's hold somebody else and see if somebody else can do it. Visit all 50 states, all 50 states. Not, oh my God, we're doing bad no, oh my God, we're doing bad in Pennsylvania. Let's go back to Pennsylvania for 4 days, and then and the hell with 3 other states that we were planning on going to those 3 days. Visit all 50 states, handshake, baby kiss all 50 states. Talk to the American people like they deserve to be talked to. It's going to be a part of my campaign website. Doesn't mean, like you said, and $300,000 a state still comes to $15 million. Where am I going to get $15 million from? That's the big question, too. That means I would have to promise some corporate entity and probably have to do it via the Citizens United engine, something big in return, right? So it's all a big quagmire. It's all a big question that can't really be done, but the website can be done. I can accomplish that.
Yeah. Well, and I think, like you say, it can then send that message about why this is a challenge for why we kind of end up with the candidates we end up with.
Right.
I mean, I think a lot of it also comes down to accountability. So we've had some folks on the show trying to present ways to sort of make our candidates more accountable. There's one called Bridge Grades that's more about the accountability there is just, are they working across the aisle? Because our whole country is our whole system of government, I should say, is based on a model where you have to work across the aisle to build coalitions, to build standing change, right? Long-standing change. These pendulum swings don't do us any good, right? My side does a thing, the other side reverses it. The other side does a thing, my side reverses it, right? So the way to get things done is, the way to get a real change that lasts is to build coalitions, and you build coalitions by talking across the other side. So there's a website called Bridge Grades that you can use to actually see, and it gives a simple grade for any candidate you type in. You'll get an A through F grade on how good are they about working with the other side. And you might be surprised that you might love your guy in your town, and you'll find out they have an F.
Well, that would not surprise me. I would be surprised they had the F, but it wouldn't surprise me considering the whole. But I mean, I am definitely talking to my partner on this about getting the website up and running and just letting people reflect on it. That's all I'm saying is, don't expect me to be the next president of the United States. But it's time we get like you do. It's really what you do is, let's just talk about it in a normal tone. We just had fun. I mean, really, this whole podcast, I laughed more than I've laughed in 30 minutes. On an average, I've laughed more than usual. So, I mean, and it can be a fun topic. I mean, I love to use the acronym AOC when I say, is that another obnoxious child? I crack myself up every time I say it, but I didn't know she just said she was trading, and because she can. I mean, I'm more impressed with her than before, just from talking to you. She's never been my person, but now she's got a centimeter. The thing moved a little. But what do they call that? The needle.
The needle, yeah.
This has been incredible, really incredible. Did you want to talk about anything in particular, David? Like an example of how you calmed down a room or anything?
Well, one thing I'll say, a lot of folks, like I was saying in the beginning, a lot of folks kind of want the magical news source or something like that. They can go and be fully educated. I mean, I would say a good place to start to just get a better understanding of things is talk to your neighbors, talk to your people in your community, and really listen. Like, put yourself in listen mode and be sincere about listening and say, well, I'm not going to give my opinion yet. I want to hear all of their opinions. And you're going to get rattled a little bit, but if you put yourself in listen mode and say, I'm just going to hear them, you'll learn more about what people think. You'll learn more about what issues are out there in people's minds than you would by digging into any news article or even social media or TV news or whatever, right? You'll learn way more about what's really going on out there. What issues are people concerned about, and what fears do they have, right? And even if, and especially, of course, I'm talking about if you have neighbors that maybe differ on the political spectrum, and spend that time listening for a while and understanding them. And you might think, oh, you want me to do this thing as a favor to them. No, this is actually really good for you, right? For one thing, you'll have more clarity on your position on these issues, right? And often people think if I'm going to listen, they're going to change my mind or whatever, right? Well, if you're afraid they might change your mind, maybe your position isn't that solid to begin with, right? But listening doesn't mean agreeing, right? You can listen and still completely hold your position and say, I'm glad you told me all that. I still see it differently, but I'm glad you told me all that, and I understand it better. So that's one piece, that by listening like that, you'll know more about what's happening in the world than you will by watching the news. But you'll also have a clearer picture of how you stand on you'll have to think about, how am I going to defend about that thing? If I really believe the thing I believe and they believe that other thing, and they said that thing that might make some sense, I have to now add that into my thinking about how I think about that issue. So it'll help you have clarity on your position. Plus, if you are some kind of you want to be a persuader and you want to change people's mind, you can't change people's mind if you don't understand what their concerns are, right? It's like you were saying before with Obama talking about he's convincing people on his own side or whatever. It's the same problem. Like if you want to persuade someone who has different views and you don't know anything about how they came to those views or what their concerns are, you're making assumptions about that. You're not going to be a very good persuader. But if you want to be a persuader and understand, then you're going to have to understand people, and particularly where they're hurt, where they're concerned, where their fears are. And so you'll be better at understanding where you stand, and you'll if you want to be a persuader. I'm not saying everyone should be a persuader. You don't have to go persuade everybody. You don't have to go on a crusade and persuade everybody. But
no, but where
a lot
they're
of people,
hurt and how they got hurt. That's an
yeah,
important thing to listen to, because the truth is,
yes,
I've listened to people that hate Democrats because they got financially pummeled by some Democrat president's decision. And then ultimately they kind of got lifted, like all waters lift all, or whatever you call it, high waters lift all boats. They got lifted a little by some conservative policy that gave them an ability to breathe again. So yeah, how did you get hurt? I understand that, but you realize that $50,000 uptick you got also gave Apple $3 trillion, and that's where we lose that balance. So absolutely, I love the idea of just listening. That's a lot of what I do. My friend tells me all you do is go. No, I love everybody's opinion. I love to hear their opinions. So that's just something more people need to be able to do, is just stop concluding that they call Trump grifting, and grifting is essentially, the definition means minimal. And it's like, the reason I always said the reason Democrats coined the phrase grifting on Trump is because they generally steal more than Trump's ever stole. But the fact of the matter is that they keep pointing out he's building this ballroom and he's paying it, and it's the money is going to his donors or something. And I'm like, yeah, and there's been a lot of examples of that from Democrats. So calm down in your assertions. Yes, he's building a ballroom that's a very focal point of America. He tore down half the White House. So I got the memo. We all did, but your guys are no better. So I don't know. I just went on a tangent there for a minute, so I apologize. But
well, yeah, I mean, that's a big piece of what we talk about too, is kind of sometimes you have to look, you have more influence with people on your own side too, if you have a side. And even if you don't have a side, you probably lean to a side, right? You're more connected with one side than the other most often. And you have a lot more influence with those people than you do with people on the other side too. So looking at your own side and seeing some of those flaws and being reminded of them and being aware of them can help you have a much more balanced perspective of these situations out there. And like I say, sometimes you might get more outrage because now I'm not only mad at the other side, I'm mad at my side.
well, that's where I'm at. I'm like disgusted with both sides. I'm like, I'm not mad anymore. That's a good thing, though. I'm not mad. Just like, when I've come to the realization that, yeah, things can change, but probably not. We're about the same age, probably not in our lifetime, but some good could come out of this. But I find it's really exciting what you do, Outrage Overload, the podcast with David Beckemeyer. I think it's great. How do you get your guests? I mean, where do you draw from for guests?
Yeah, I mean, I have a few different main categories. So for research and science on it, I mostly pull out of academia. So they've written published papers about it, or they've written books. And so I'll reach out to those in academia for that. for practitioners, I discover folks that are out there working in this space. There's a lot of people working in community, bringing people together, solving problems and working together. So I go out and reach out to those folks. We're a member of the Listen First Project, which is hundreds of organizations that are doing this kind of work. So I get a chance to talk to some of those people. And our show now is a part of the Democracy Group podcast network. So that also gives me exposure to a lot of people through that network. And the same thing on sort of misinformation and disinformation. I often will go out to academia and talk to folks that have either written books or studied that kind of thing. And then in tech, since that's the world I came from, I have a pretty good sort of network of folks I can reach out to in tech about when we sort of bring in sort of the adjacencies of how tech has been a factor in all this, right?
Tech is huge in this, and it's great because it's really going to make a difference. Are you ever able to decipher when you try to get to the disinformation and then you reach the other side to say, explain the disinformation? You always wonder if they're disinforming you too.
Yeah, I mean, there's the whole process of sort of critical thinking and thinking about thinking sort of the metacognition idea, but then there's lots of psychological factors coming in, right? So there's all the cognitive biases that we have. There's a bunch of other defense mechanisms. Our brain is really good at protecting our identity. So yeah, it's really hard to know you're not falling into some of those things. You're not being manipulated. But a lot of it comes back to how you look at evidence and does the evidence align with these assertions?
Yeah, I think I always try to think of it in 9 different ways, and the evidence is one thing, but I do generally think for sure Donald Trump's got it wrong, and then I try to get away from that logic now more than ever. I'm really trying to see my logic is trying to see if in a way he's getting some of it right, because he is like Reggie Jackson of baseball. He hits a lot of strikes, but here and there he gets a home run out there too. And so this has been incredible, David. Do you want to just tell us about your podcast one last time, how we can get on it? I've been watching it the last couple of days. I loved it. Like I said, I really did love that one guest, Kay Scary, where she has a local bar and she keeps it.
Yeah, I was talking on that case. I was talking to one of the folks from this bridge building movement and a group that works in communities, and she just offhandedly said something. I was asking about how do we create spaces for these kind of conversations, where we can have a deeper conversation, a civil conversation. How do we create spaces for that? And she goes, well, sometimes you just do it. And she goes, I know a woman who bought a bar in DC so she could create it. I'm like, so she could create a space for these kind of conversations. And I'm like, what? I need to meet this woman. Tell me about this woman.
I thought that was really neat. If we could do it on a major scale all across the country, it could change everything, really, where you just open your mind to everybody's point of view.
I really appreciate the opportunity. You can find out more about our show at outrageoverload.net. That's where our contact info is there. You know how us podcasters, we love feedback. So my email's there. Any way you want to reach out to me is there. My socials are there, all that stuff. So you can find the show there. And obviously, if you just look in your podcast player app, however you're listening right now, we should be there.
Sounds great. Thank you. David Beckemeyer, Outrage Overload Podcast. It's been my pleasure. Thanks for being so generous with your time.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate it. Thanks. Talk to you soon.